Welcome to the Barry Podcast, an unofficial show covering the hit HBO series Barry. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G. Esquire, the fifth master of the table dive. And I'm here with my co-host, Magnum Mills, to talk about the 16th episode of Barry, Berkman Greater Than Block.
I'm Magnum Mills. That title is a mouthful, and I would consider myself a master of the table dance, if those are still a thing. I mean, maybe it's just heroin tables and couch dances. I don't know what the youths are up to these days. Thank you for checking out the Barry Podcast. Find us wherever you get your pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, all the good ones. Just search for Barry Podcast. Find us on social media at Barry Podcast. Search for us on YouTube, or you can go to joeblowfootballshow.com. Brings you right to our YouTube channel. If you could, please take about 7 seconds to do one of the following: like, comment, rate, follow, subscribe. You know the deal. Takes you literally those couple of seconds, but it helps other people find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
And during our episode discussion, we will be spoiling the ever-loving shit out of Berkman Greater Than Block, as well as all previous episodes of Barry. Near the end of this episode, we'll have a spoiler section where we discuss further episodes and events of Barry, including any recent news, trailers, podcasts, etc., etc. But don't you worry, we'll let you know when we get to that point, so you'll be able to hit the stop button and go do something else. Watch one of our other videos, listen to one of our other podcasts, if you choose to do so. Mills, it's time, buddy. Hit us with the episode details, starting now.
This is season 2, episode 8, titled Berkman Greater Than Block, with a little greater than symbol there. Originally aired Sunday, May 19, 2019, with an estimated 2.21 million viewers in the United States tuning in live. That makes it the most watched episode of Barry from the first 3 seasons. Still enjoying that lead in from Game of Thrones here. Directed by Bill Hader. This is the 5th episode of Barry that he's directed. Written by Alec Berg and Bill Hader. This is the 6th written by credit on Barry for the dynamic duo, and the fairly short plot synopsis is: Barry seeks vengeance. NoHo Hank faces the looming threat of being sent home. Sally makes a split-second decision on the night of the acting class's big performance. Fuchs turns to an unexpected source for help.
That was fairly short. And before we dive into our recap discussion of the episode, we're going to give you our overall thoughts. I didn't remember part of this. You know, this is a rewatch for us on the Barry Podcast, but I didn't remember part of this with them being in jail, right? I didn't remember, Barry being in jail initially here to start this, or Gene basically getting the whole thing pinned on him. I don't know why I forgot about that, but I thought overall this episode, it felt maybe a little bit longer, but it moved along. There was some build up there towards the end with the rage stuff. I think some of the overall humor of this was buried with just some of the, no pun intended, it was buried, not bury, not body, but it was buried alive, if you will. But it didn't stand out as much as I wanted it to. Thought it was a really good episode, enjoyed it. It ends on one of those classic Barry style cliffhangers, so I thought that was really good. I like how it opens up right where it kind of left off. So this to me, going back through, I thought this was a really good episode.
As I always say, there are no bad episodes of Barry. I think a lot of stuff is great here. Obviously, the performances, as always, comes in hot, leaves you on a note where you're skip intro, skip everything, going right to the next episode if you can. I think all the character motivations make total sense. The one thing is that some of the plotting really falls apart if you start to think about it at all. We'll get into it a little bit as we go through, but there's a lot of this that just wouldn't happen. There's just no way. I know that the show is in a heightened reality to begin with, but it's never taken me out of it in this kind of way before, where there's just a nagging thing in my brain that I can't shut off. Overall, again, really enjoyed it. I will ding it a bit when we go to grade it for those kind of things, but I think all of the Barry season finales have been good, but this is probably the weakest of the 3 we've had so far. But again, that's like going to a steakhouse and asking which cut of the 30-day dry age, whatnot do you want here? It's all pretty freaking good.
All right, now that Mills has made us hungry thinking about 30-day dry-aged ribeyes, let's go ahead and begin our breakdown for season 2 finale, starting now.
And now you have me thinking of a steakhouse where I can get said ribeye and a table dance. We pick right back up where we left off at the end of episode 7. Barry is running through the woods and Fuchs has a gun pointed at Gene's head. We hear sirens and helicopters in the distance. Fuchs whispers something in Gene's ear and takes off running. Barry spots Fuchs running away, but instead of chasing him, he runs to Gene. With the cops approaching, Barry is out of moves. Well, almost out of moves. He puts something in the trunk and slams the lid as we cut to a silent title card. You mentioned it. You like how they brought us right back in where we brought off the previous episode, the true cliffhanger style.
This whole thing was something that bothered me last episode, where it's just like, I don't believe that it was that easy for Fuchs and Gene to find it, and I don't believe that the cops, if they really, kind of combed acreage here, there's no way that they couldn't find it and everyone else did. I don't see how Fuchs gets away. There's a lot. While I like it in theory, there's a lot here that you just kind of gotta yada 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 and not really think about, because otherwise it just doesn't. It's not very realistic. But I did like how they did it in terms of just bringing you right back in. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes, from a structure story standpoint, I like the choice. I think that worked very well. But this is how stuff starts to fall apart. Barry runs past Fuchs. Why on earth doesn't Barry just shoot Fuchs? Okay, so you're telling me Barry didn't bring a gun with him, and he must not have, because the cops don't say anything about him having a gun when they arrest him. But then you're telling me Barry didn't even have a gun in his car? He went up here without a gun when he said he was going to kill Fuchs? Do you really buy that at all? Even for a second, that Barry went up there completely unarmed?
Now, how was he gonna save Gene?
What was he going to... Right.
Was he gonna throw a rock at Fuchs?
It's just one of those things with this episode. I think they knew what they wanted to do and they couldn't figure out how to work from a story standpoint. So they just kind of use the, just don't think about it too hard. And again, perfectly fine. But I have a hard time believing that Barry wouldn't have just right there as soon as he saw Fuchs, bop, wop, keep going. Just shoot him twice and keep moving, right? I mean, maybe he hears the cops and I don't know. It's whatever. It sets up a really great ending for the episode. So I don't want to complain too much. But again, it's right off the top. It's like, ooh, boy, what it does do is it definitely kind of leaves you wondering, well, what are they going to do after this? We see pretty quickly what they do. Barry's pacing in a jail cell. He eventually sits down. Mae Dunn comes in, asks him some questions about being out there in the woods. And despite Barry telling her that he also talked to Kenneth Goulet, the cops think that he doesn't exist. Gene kills Janice, and that's because of Fuchs's phone call. Mae tells Barry that he can't talk to Gene, but he's free to go. Barry leaves, and as he walks out, he leaves a threatening voicemail for Fuchs. And just before we even get into the evidentiary of it all, probably don't call somebody and threaten to kill them while you're still in the police station, right?
Yeah, I got to imagine that that's probably not the smartest of moves. I mean,
It's being recorded, right? I mean, maybe they don't have
everything
audio,
is. They went really hard on this whole revenge thing for Barry. And I think they're trying to set up this thing between Fuchs and Barry, which I think is cool, but they did it at risking, like, well, there's no way that would happen. I mean, dude, if you and I were leaving jail and I made a phone call like that, we would be right back in jail.
Somebody'd be saying something. Someone's sitting there trying to get some time off their sentence, being like, "Yo, you should hear what I just heard this guy say."
And I wish they would have told us why they let Barry go. I mean,
they basically make it clear, but again, this is where everything falls apart. They say there's no evidence of Fuchs. All they had to do was fingerprint Gene's phone. Fuchs handled that. His prints are in the system. You're telling me that they didn't fingerprint his phone. And Mae Dunn was there with Loach at Gene's house when they ended the investigation or the search, at least in the season premiere here. There's no way she thinks that dude killed Janice. He's begging them to keep going and everything. There's no way deep down that she buys it, but you get the idea here. While she's a little suspicious of Barry, she seems to think Gene did it. And then she flips on a dime and just instantly forgives him later in the episode when they find the pin. There's just so much of that doesn't make sense. And again, if you mentioned where the car is actually physically located, how the hell did the cops get there in 10 minutes?
But they couldn't find it after missing a detective and searching for weeks and weeks.
A month,
and weeks.
Apparently. They searched for a month, apparently. And
I mean, come on, dude. But like Fuchs, I mean, again, that's where it's just kind of like, yeah.
That's when the minivan flips the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th time.
It's not quite that bad, but it's approaching.
I mean, cool stuff overall. You like the idea that Barry is still trying to stick up for Gene. May even points it out that he's protective of Mr. Kusino, and May kind of gets the, the killer line when it's like, Barry asks, like,
Can I see Mr. Kusno?
Oh no, we think he killed his girlfriend, so he's staying here with us.
just very matter-of-factly. Don't give May a lot of shout outs, but shout out May Dunn here. Again, I don't think she should even believe that Gene did this. I think this is bad police work, but she played it off pretty cool, I guess, for what it's worth. I mean,
She
right
did.
now, you got no Loach, you got no Janice Moss. She's Nino and G Money over there, unless they bring our guys, the tech. Where's the tech dudes from season 1? I love those guys. The IT support there. Let's bring those back. Bring those guys back. I enjoyed them. After that, Hank and the Chechen men arrive at the monastery. The heroin deal goes down in 5 hours, and the men are still ignoring Hank. So Hank takes it upon himself to buy a table that he can put the heroin on. A heroin table.
Heroin table. That's got to be a thing, right?
As he's on the phone trying to buy said heroin table, he gets a call from Batir. Batir is coming to replace Hank, and Hank will be going back to Chechnya. Hank does what he always does in a bad situation. He calls Barry. Hank explains the situation and asks Barry to vouch for him to his men. Barry can't do this right now. He gets out of his parked car while Hank is still talking.
I guess the only way I can kind of get around it is like Sally's so in her world that she wouldn't have even heard that Bluetooth yet. Like, you ever pull up next to one and those Bluetooths are so loud, dude. Like, you can just hear it like radiating. I think Sally's just so in her own world, she wouldn't even been like, "Who is that?"
If she's outside smoking a cigarette, we'll talk about that part of that in the
I didn't know
next
she
thing.
smoked.
I don't think she does. I think that was the point. One of those things, that's always kind of a sitcom thing, or you do it in a cartoon or something. You see the person who's not drinking, not a drinker, and they're just pounding them back like, "Okay, how was your day?" Not a lot here, other than the heroin table is just the greatest thing ever, right? And Hank is so specific about talking about the floor plan, and he gets a call on the other line from Batir. I was sure that was the signal that the guy was hanging up. No, apparently, dude stuck on the phone with him, and he was really willing to work with him. So maybe a heroin table is a thing. I don't know. Maybe it's not just Hank.
Maybe not. Maybe they get those calls all the time. What do you think, man? Should he go wood?
I like the marble top. That was
The
nice.
marble
And,
top? It's probably a good, yeah, it's
all
probably
right,
a
I
good
did
call.
a heroin table. What do you think? Is that the name of a 1990s alt rock band or the name of Quentin Tarantino's next film?
I'm going Quentin Tarantino.
I don't know. I don't know if there's enough toes in there. We might have to get the Foot Clan, heroin table and the Foot Clan or something. I don't know. That might be infringing on the Ninja Turtles a little bit. And Hank gets a
Uma
nice.
Thurman's starring in it. We do know that.
Of course,
Uma
she has
and her
to be.
feet. Starring.
Well, that
Uma
might be
Thurman's
that's the
feet.
title. Uma and her feet is the title of the animated spin-off of the flick.
We digress. Yeah, not a lot here, but good scene to kind of set up that plot point as it develops throughout the episode.
Yeah, are you surprised at all that the men let Hank stay with them? I guess they haven't totally disowned him, because at the end of the previous episode, I thought there was a chance that they were like Hank was going to be getting an Uber back by himself.
Yeah,
I guess because he's so nice, they can't. He's like a puppy; they can't bear to kick him to the curb, even if they have defrocked him, so to speak.
I think they're following like the hierarchy of the Chechnya mafia, where basically they're letting Batar, whoever, kind of deal with him.
Shout out Pinterest, because apparently they have heroin tables while Amazon does not. I love that little shout out there. Also love Hank in glasses. I think he can pull off that look. And when Hank says there's a suspiciously low level of eye contact going on, I could really relate, because that sounds like every Tinder date I've ever been on. After that, we mentioned it. We see Barry's outside the theater. Sally's out there smoking a cigarette, waiting for him. This is where the big performance is going to take place. Sally asks Barry how his audition was, then reminds him that she doesn't really care. She just had to ask. She hustles him inside. Sally asks where Gene is. Obviously, no one has been able to get a hold of him. They go inside, and Barry's impressed by the size of the place. Sally tells him that Lindy managed to sell it out.
Got all the seats.
Yeah, Lindsay sold out the whole place. She told people it was a diversity showcase, and I think they were afraid not to RSVP.
We're treated to a rehearsal of Jermaine's performance, which is now way more powerful as he's telling the truth about the aliens. Sally is excited about what she and Barry inspired, but she's very nervous about the performance. They've got 2 hours before it begins, and they need to rehearse. We teased it with the little cigarette here, but Sally is really nervous, right?
She's uncanny nervous. And they kind of played into this a little bit last episode with just kind of making that theater look like it's freaking Madison Square Garden. I mean, it's the biggest venue on planet Earth for them. And you can see those nerves kind of coming together here. And Barry's just like not even into it, right? He like doesn't even know where he is. If that's not autopilot, I don't know what autopilot is.
And the fact that Barry continues to be impressed with how big it is when he points out that it has a balcony, and Sally's like,
Yes, a lot of fucking seats, move on!
just a couple of bangers there from Sally, especially the whole audition thing at the beginning. I know I mentioned it in the recap of the scene, but she's like,
How was your audition?
Oh, it was
I'm really
fine.
just asking. I don't need an answer.
that they're at that point of the relationship, I guess, right? Where they're asking questions, but they don't even they just ask the question, turn off the brain before the answer starts. Be like, all right, I have 30 seconds to a minute to just do my own thing. And one little callback here, comedy's all louder and faster, and Sally gives Nick a note to retch louder. And we also see Natalie's kind of running the show without Gene there, and I think she's enjoying it. And shout out Jermaine too. Dan, shout out Jermaine doing his
Jermaine, in my opinion, Jermaine steals the show, man. Sad, but like it.
for now. There's another performance later that might top his, but we'll get to that. Like Julio, we'll see you when you get there.
Not Nick and his bulimia, or
That's not even real. It's fake. He admits to it being fake after all that, I believe.
I know.
All right, we'll get there. Jumping ahead.
We'll get there.
They're like Doc Brown over here, dude. Back at the police station, we see Mae Dunn interrogating Gene. They can't find any trace of Kenneth Goulet, but they have the call he made to 911 confessing to Janice's murder and threatening to commit suicide. After Gene declines to confess, he's officially booked for Janice's murder. Then it's back to the monastery. The Chechen men, under the control of Marbek, are gearing up for the heroin deal. They've got literally a Grand Theft Auto level of weapons, and they seem like a real army. Hank's just kind of wandering around, taking it all in, when he's surprised by Fuchs. Kind of impressive army, right? They weren't messing around with the supply chain, if nothing else.
Not at all, man.
I guess, was that their stuff, or was that what the Burmese had stockpiled there, and now they won that, because they beat them, and so now they've taken over their base, and you get all the stuff that comes with the base, like the stash.
That was my guess, because I didn't think that they had that.
That's a decent weaponry in the
armory.
desert, but not that much. I mean, they had a fair amount, but more like 1 to 2 guns for everybody.
Yeah,
this
dude,
this seemed like an American level of guns. This is like 5 guns per person here. A lot of per capita guns. And kind of on the interrogation thing, I mentioned it before, but do you really think deep down that Mae believes that Gene killed Janice? I do not, but she seems to play it that way here.
I think they're highlighting just the fact that she's, let's face it. Essentially, outside of Janice, they have made any law enforcement in the show an absolute complete joke. And I think they're kind of highlighting that she's just kind of grasping at straws to try to find any logical explanation for Janice's death. I think it's just kind of like the easy way out, right? She's not going to do some great detective work to really figure it out. I think she's just like, oh, well, it sounds like, and here's the other thing. It didn't sound like Gene Cousineau. It sounded like Fuchs. I mean, come on, man. That didn't sound like Gene Cousineau, even though he called from his own phone.
And what kills me is I think the show knew that was going to be a problem. So they chose to address it straight on and just have her say it sounded just like you, just to dismiss it all outright. Voice print technology isn't what you think it is, especially this day and age when you can fake a lot of voices and things like that. But like you said, they're not the same person. Fuchs tried to use Gene's speech patterns a little bit, but there's almost no way you could think that was Gene. I'm sorry. And that would get thrown out of court immediately too. I think it
100%.
sounds like him with nobody to prove it or anything like that. I think that's definitely not enough to base a conviction on. And if that was I don't know. You can't blame the police for showing up after getting that phone call. So, all right, we're getting into admissibility and stuff like that. But basically, they're just not, the police plot line, at least here, is just full of holes. I think it's a nice way to say it. But shout out Mae Dunn. She tries to do the good cop thing. She pulls up a chair, and I was sure she was going to do the thing where she makes it backwards and sits down and does the little, Michelle Pfeiffer and in the in the Coolio video joint, just sitting backwards, looking all cool, relatable.
Gangster's Paradise, man.
Backstage, just before the show is about to begin, Barry calls Detective Wilson for an update about Gene and finds out that he's been booked. Barry calls Fuchs and vows to kill him, but Fuchs taunts him and suggests Barry turn himself in to save Jean. Sally is excited, but still very nervous. Lindsay gives her a pep talk, but it's obvious that she's dealing with some nerves of her own. Then it's showtime. Nick is up first. Sally is up last. Dude, who's more nervous, Lindsay or Sally?
Sally. I mean, they're both nervous, but Sally is next
I don't.
level.
Did you see Lindsay just tearing? I'm assuming it was her program, just into piece by piece by piece, just nervous. You get the idea, right? She's invested pretty heavily in this, some of her career capital. So if this does not go well, this might be a bigger deal for her than just Lindsay or than Sally not being able to book something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she got this theater. She feel like she's pulled a lot of strings to get all these people here. She probably called in a lot of her chits that she had available around town. Probably had to hand out some future favors. So,
yeah, that's true. I mean, she's got a lot riding on it here. I mean, that's no denying that.
any thoughts on why Barry called Fuchs? Is there any chance that he did it to try to get that little boost for his acting performance? Because we've seen that before. I mean, he's already kind of told Fuchs that. It seems a little repetitive to call him again, I guess, now that Gene has been officially booked. But do you think on any level he was doing that to try to get that little, the boost of the secret sauce to use?
Maybe, but I think it's more so I don't think he even cared. We kind of saw it last episode. He had his big audition. He didn't even give a shit because, he was worried about Fuchs and Cousineau, right? And I think same thing here. I think he's so obsessed with getting even with Fuchs for what he did that's just what it is, man. I don't know that he's even thinking about, hey, I need to get in the game here. I think he's more just like, I need to get even and absolutely kill Fuchs.
Yeah, I think the killing Fuchs is, pretty clear. I think he literally says, I'm going to fucking kill you, Fuchs. But
Yeah.
Fuchs has a nice taunt here. He is right that Barry could get Gene out of it by turning himself in. Fuchs has kind of built an interesting little conundrum for Barry here, right? He can get Gene out, but the only way he could think of to do it, obviously he had the pin thing, but the way he plays it, I don't think he ever thought that was really going to work, and he just assumed it was out the door when he got booked. But I don't know, man. Any thoughts?
I love that Fuchs put him in that position, honestly, because he's right. He couldn't save it. And, Fuchs had all that pent up anger and jealousy about how Barry feels about Cousineau versus how Barry feels about, like, Fuchs wants to be like his father figure, and have him look up to him. And so I think Fuchs loves this. You love him so much, go ahead and turn yourself in, kind of thing. So I really like that.
Yeah, pointing it out, that would be the altruistic thing. So just go ahead and get him off it. He didn't do it. And on top of that, not only would Barry have to go to jail, he'd have to admit to Mr. Cousineau that he is that violent person and he killed the love of his life. And yeah, it definitely puts Barry in a spot. And speaking of the spotlight's on Nick in his performance to open the show. It honestly goes a bit better than I would have expected. Eric's goes about how I would have expected. Back at the monastery, Hank tells Fuchs that he needs Barry, and Fuchs tells him that's impossible. But since Fuchs made Barry, maybe the Chechens will listen to Fuchs. Before he can try, the Bolivians and the Burmese show up for the heroin deal. Sensing an opportunity, Fuchs goes outside to talk to them. He appears to Cristobal on behalf of Hank, and against all odds, it works. Cristobal and Hank reconcile and declare their love for each other in front of their men. They walk off with Fuchs, and you can tell that Esther is not happy with these new developments. Shout out Cristobal's little leg lift there when they're embracing. That always kills me.
Oh, dude. Yeah. When this happened, did you have any, because it was kind of like Fuchs wanted to be like, no, I made Barry, they'll listen. But then he realized he wasn't getting anywhere and he ran out of time. Did you expect him to go out and kind of do what he does?
Not really. When he takes off, they leave it ambiguous, right? He could just be like, oh shit, and he's doing the Fuchs thing and running away, or running towards it, which he does here. These are things that are definitely going to be in contention for my favorite quote and favorite moment. The whole bit where Fuchs goes outside and they can't tell if Fuchs is talking to him or he's on a Bluetooth. Yet another Bluetooth joke here. And he finally, and Chris Paul's like, oh, I think I heard my name. Oh yeah, he's talking to us. And just Fuchs trying to sell. This is Fuchs, right? This is what he can do, or at least the best thing that he can do. I don't know that do you really buy that he can actually bring this in, or is this because Cristobal's just looking for any excuse to forgive Hank? And Fuchs just got a little lucky that Cristobal was already predisposed to forgiveness.
Yes, because again, this is something that makes it, let's be real, dude. Anybody running an organized crime syndicate like a Cristobal with the Bolivians, and we're talking about all this, you're not going to just get like sweet talked into it. It is, and we'll talk about it a little bit later when they hug, and that's a serious hug. Cristobal tells him, "Te amo, mi corazón," which means "I love you, my heart," and that's real, dude. So I gotta believe it was kind of like, I'm looking for any reason, I'm heartbroken that I had to do this kind of thing.
Makes a lot of sense here. And you get another couple of little small things outside. Cristobal's Hank tried to crisscross me line definitely cracked me up a little bit. And then when they do have their reconciliation, Cristobal tells Hank,
You only tried to kill Esther because you cared about me.
I enjoyed that one. And Fuchs, when they first start talking, and Fuchs says,
You know, in America, Esther is a woman's name.
that was just absolutely brilliant.
Oh, dude, it was great. And she takes a step forward too. And Cristobal's like,
No.
good bit of writing there.
And obviously, we don't get a ton of scenes in the series between Hanks and Fuchs, but they're always gold. We get the Barry goon whisperer line, which is pretty great.
What I need more than anything right now is Barry. He is like crazy Chechen goon whisperer.
It might be a bit tricky.
And then the Fleetwood Mac line, which is pretty fucking classic.
You guys are like Fleetwood Mac. You break up, you get back together again, and then you go out and make a great album, like the best of Fleetwood Mac.
This is maybe more final than that.
And just not to forget about the acting class, Nick, has a made-up stomach issue. But honestly, with 3-day-old pizza, you don't have to pour bleach on that, right? I feel like I've eaten 3-day-old pizza out of the fridge all the time. I'm assuming he's talking about pizza that's been sitting out for 3 days.
Got to, because dude, 3-day-old pizzas, that's I'm excited about it still. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and yes, I'm pretty sure I've eaten 3-day-old pizza in college that was left out or something. Someone didn't. It's like, oh, what is this from last night? And started eating it. Like, no, dude, that's from a couple days ago. Like, y'all need to clean your shit. And Eric, his shit was fucked up, but dude, it would suck to be left in a garage sale at the age of 6.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure, would you call what he was doing deaf poetry, or what exactly was he doing?
Dude, it had a little bit of feel of that, dude. Like forgotten. Dude, it was 1, 2, 3, 4. I liked his deal, dude. I wanted to hear more. I was like, this is interesting.
I was just waiting for Dee and Charlie to come out and start doing their little bits. Back at the theater, we see Sasha wrapping up her performance. Backstage, Barry is on edge and Sally is still extremely nervous. She asks Barry if telling the truth is the right thing to do. Sally finally notices that something is wrong with Barry, but by that point, it's too late. Natalie opens the door and tells them that it's time. As they walk to the stage, Sally tries to talk to Barry, but he doesn't respond. They arrive on the side of the stage, and Sally tries to get Barry to focus. They practice the choke, and Sally slaps Barry across the face and tells him to stay in that place. Is that a bit too much of a push from Sally there? The actual slap in the face? Because you see Barry's eyes kind of, for a second, he goes to the crazy eyes.
Yeah, he definitely, and he can't hear her, and he has those crazy murder eyes. I think it brought something out of him, man. I think, and she knows too, because she's like, stay there.
Yeah, and in nice subtext here, Sally's literally talking to Barry about telling the truth. She's talking about her performance, but Barry's considering telling the truth to the cops. So that's a nice way to kind of correlate the feelings that they have going on, even though they're about two wildly different things. And you keep pointing out Jermaine, but Sasha, her performance here with the pictures is just so amazing.
All right, you guys clearly don't get this. So to recap, this is walking down this. It was seen by her.
And then when she gets into it, why she doesn't have a picture of her own from her childhood.
Not actually her. This is not a photo of me. I don't have any photos of myself from my childhood because my uncle burnt down my house when my mum was still inside. But that is not relevant to this story, is it?
Obviously, that's the real story, right? That's why the horse is stuck in her mind because of that, but she can't. That was the actual story, that she should have been doing this whole time. And that's why the horse sticks out, but she doesn't even. It's so buried that it doesn't even register. I mean, this just broke me a little bit.
And what I love about this too is, again, some of the funnier things that kind of got buried a little bit here underneath the overall stuff that's happening in the show. But same thing with Jermaine, dude. Like all their stories, they started off like with their lie. You kind of got to see kind of the truth behind them all. And I thought that was a cool little element of this episode that kind of went under the radar a little bit.
The guy said the Mike's pointed out at the end with all the other performances being kind of boring or sad. Really, I guess sad is the word, kind of downers, because they are telling the truth. When you see Sally and Barry walking through the backstage area, there's people getting ready. Why is Nick in a Speedo lighting up a smoke?
No idea, dude. I have no clue what he's doing.
I'm assuming it's just a background gag. Someone thought it would be really funny. But I'm definitely in my head, I'm like, well, Sally's supposed to be the last performance. Is that just what he's doing to hang out back there? I didn't have, maybe he he's secretly going out for the swim instructors movie or something.
Yeah,
maybe
is,
he found the script and he's just he's smoking the cigarette while the shit pie bakes.
He's a shitbird. Hey Hank, you shitbird. Hey Ike, you shitbird. Want a pie?
That'll be stuck in my head. Thank you for that. It's finally time. It's the big moment, and Sally and Barry begin their performance. It starts out like in the rehearsal, but then Sally literally flips the script when she flips the table over instead of Barry. Instead of doing the truth, she does something closer to her initial performance. She stands up to Barry, berating him, hitting him. She quickly exits stage left, gets her stuff, and heads for the exit. Lindsay stops her, and Sally tells her that she saw all those people and she panicked. She lied. Lindsay apologizes for forcing her to bare herself in front of so many people. As they're talking, the mics approach and tell Sally that they loved her performance. It's not at all what they were expecting. Sally's about to tell them the truth when a bunch of other people come up to congratulate her. Barry failing upwards. It seems to be the theme of the show sometimes.
He has a way of just basically getting by, man. He's a lucky guy in some ways, isn't he? Shit just kind of goes his way
is
sometimes.
This the universe giving Sally what she deserved? After so much standing on the soapbox, she's the one, we're going to do the truth and all this stuff, and then she doesn't do it. Do you think she sold out at all, or is this just, she got nervous and made a decision in the moment, and there's not much more to it than that?
I think she just got nervous, made a decision, regretted it, wish she wouldn't until she saw the attention she was getting. That's what I think. And then she was like, oh, well, I'm glad I did.
Right. That's who Sally is, right? She goes from being horrified about what she did. 5 minutes later, she's already convinced herself that it was a phenomenal decision by her to do it. That's just who she is, I think, to at least to a certain extent. It was her turn in the rotation to fail upward anyways. That's how it works, I think.
Ignorance is bliss.
Do you think Barry really cared about her changing the scene at all, as far as flipping the table over, switching up? Because he storms off before she does. But like you said before, I don't know that he really cares. He just kind of went with it. It didn't really seem to change his performance.
I think it surprised him a little bit. And I think he was in a place where he could have delivered the same way we saw him last episode. I think he was in that place where he wasn't, where you were kind of worried about, is he going to be able to do this? But she just took over and did it. And I don't think he really cares, man. I think his head is not even there. He's a million miles away dealing with the Fuchs and Cousineau thing.
Yeah, contemplating turning himself into the cops for murder to save Jean. That's definitely something to be obsessing about. And I've also been obsessing about, we call him Other Mike here, one of the Mikes who's always got some kind of pillow. Here he's got, a hot water bottle or something? He seems to be deflating air out of some sort of, I'm assuming it's an inflatable pillow. I don't know what else it is, but he's been doing this for a couple of episodes now with the various balls, pillows, and whatnot. And they point out here that the other stories were a bummer, but the original Mike 1.0 here, he liked the one with the horse. And Mike compared her speech to Braveheart. And again, nice little callback there. Remember early in the season, Barry was trying to work his scene out and wound up giving the speech from Braveheart. Maybe he wasn't completely off base with that. Might have been a good idea. Everybody knows Braveheart.
Everybody does.
Back at the police station, it's time for Jean to be transported back to LA. On the way out, May gets pulled into an office and we don't hear what's said. When May comes out, she tells Jean that he's free to go, but he doesn't even respond. We see Barry sitting at a bus stop. He calls Detective Wilson, but hangs up when he gets his voicemail. He then calls Jean's phone, and he's surprised when Leo answers it. Leo tells Barry that they're letting Jean go. They found a Chechen pin in the trunk of the car, and they now once again believe that the Chechens killed Janice Moss. Barry asks Leo to tell Jean that everything is going to be okay, and that he was right. People can change. Oh, let's start with the obvious. A, are the cops really changing? They're letting Jean go based on this pin. And B, is there any chance that Barry's fingerprints are not on that pin?
No. And no, I mean, it's another line here where you're just kind of like, man, I really wish we wouldn't have. I really wish there was some sort of explanation around this stuff, because it's just.
Even the pin, right? There's no way Barry figured this out ahead of time. Is the show trying to say that he had this figured out? He brought this pin specifically to do this? Or is this just, again, Barry failing upwards? He had this pin in his pocket, and just as he's sitting there, he just threw it in there just on impulse, basically.
Because there's no, how could he have known that Fuchs was trying to set up Jean for the murder there?
Yeah, it doesn't really.
I guess maybe
sense.
It was just an instinct. He thought, man, this pins it back on the Chechkins and at least saves me. Maybe he was just trying to save himself at that point.
When Barry makes that first phone call to Detective Wilson, do you think he's calling to turn himself in?
No.
Then what was he going to, I'm assuming when he called Jean's phone, he was expecting to get a push to voicemail, right? What was he going to say?
I don't know. I don't know that he could tell him, especially over the phone, right? I mean,
Was he just going to tell him how the performance went? He didn't seem to care. It would seem kind of odd for me to call him to tell him
I think he was just going to try to check in and let him know, hey, I'm thinking about you. You're going to be okay. Yeah, I miss you. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe something like that.
I guess we should point out that all of a sudden, remember that phone call that sounded just like Gene? They forgot that pretty quick, right? They find this pin, all of a sudden the phone call doesn't matter anymore, that they were convinced was him like 2 hours ago. Just saying. Back at the bus stop, Barry gets a text from NoHo Hank telling him that everything is fine and that Fuchs is there. Barry speeds over to the monastery where a party is underway. Barry walks in and he's immediately recognized by Esther. Barry shoots her right between the eyes and it's on. Barry sees Fuchs, who takes off running, and Barry starts shooting everyone in sight. Fuchs runs into Akmal, who whisks Fuchs away along with Yondar. Barry makes his way through the monastery, killing everyone he encounters. Marbek smiles when he recognizes Barry and he hesitates. Barry uses that moment of hesitation to kill him. Barry makes it outside and sees Fuchs escape in a car. Batir enters the monastery and finds a special bullet on Esther's body, which pleases him greatly. Barry walks back in and sees the body of Marbek, which seems to shock him a bit. He walks into the hallway and we fade to black. How magical is this bullet? I'm just curious because Barry went through about this not being how bullets work. You have to buy the fact that he has not shot that gun at all since. That bullet was still in the clip, right? And he gets lucky enough to run into her first, but he shoots her right in the head. Is that just the shell casing? I'm going with Hank. After all this happened, Hank tried to make lemonade out of lemons. He found the shell casing and put it on Esther. That's the best I can do, but I don't know if it exactly tracks, but it made Batir happy.
Yeah, I don't think it does, but I appreciate trying to get there with it.
That's what she said.
With the magic bullet. I don't know, man. What'd you think? I mean, this was pretty crazy, right? I mean, this was kind of Barry, like that same kind of Barry we saw when he was in the war, where he goes in and just loses it on that guy. It was like that kind of magnetized. I also don't know, it's interesting. They shoot these action scenes and a lot of times they don't show all the deets and kind of how stuff's done. I found it interesting that they don't really show a lot, but I don't know how Barry is going with one single pistol with a maybe 16 in the clip and one in the chamber and taking out 2 armies of people. I just, how does that happen when these guys got machine guns and stuff? I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe
they were all magic special bullets.
It's a lot to get done with just a pistol.
And I thought it was a little bit interesting at the end. I don't think anything bothers him except Marbek, right? Like seeing him, I think that, because that was the guy, remember, he came up to him and he thanked Barry for giving him a purpose, and you felt, this is the Chechen version of Barry. So I think that broke him just a little bit in a way that, killing typically doesn't really bother him. And I think this one did a little bit. But when he was in the he's in kill mode, he didn't realize it. It's same way that the shit went down after Albert, and he shoots the innocent dude, right? He just gets into that mode, and the sound cuts out, and he's just Terminator.
Right.
So many good callbacks here. I do wonder if Rolling Rock paid them for this. I haven't had a Rolling Rock in a minute, but I did used to really.
Hey man, I enjoyed it. Yeah,
I'm about to bring it back, dude. I'm gonna get a case of Rolling Rock at some point here, and just we pointed out, but Hader's got that eye acting when he reads Hank's text and he reads Fuchs's there, and he just does the crazy eyes. Crazy eyes are so good. Where did the heroin table come from? They got one. It looked like a heroin table. Did Cristobal have one? That's what I'm guessing. Is Cristobal had one like on the side somewhere ready to go, and when Hank brings it up, he's like, "Oh, I have a heroin table."
Must have been.
And Fuchs is running away, and he tries to kick the door, and it goes really badly. I thought that was pretty hysterical. He's running down the hallway there, trying to get help, and then Barry goes to do it later, and he just kicks through the bottom of the door. I like that because in Hollywood, it's usually so easy, right? You kick the door, it pops open, no problem. We get a couple payoffs here when Esther sees Barry.
White boy Lululemon tracksuit.
Which we definitely heard, I believe, in the second episode there. Maybe it was the third episode. No, that was the second episode, I think. And no, beginning of the third. One of those two. And we get the payoff to the Bolivians are short joke. We finally see two Bolivians with guns, and they're just, they're probably, I don't know, 5.5 feet tall or something like that when Barry shoots them. So a little bit of a payoff there, because that's been a running joke for basically the 2 full seasons. So this is a scene that, even though it's a big action scene, not a lot of dialogue, it does actually bring a few things from the previous parts of the season back around. And in the final scene of the episode, when we fade back in from black, we see Leo helping Gene get into bed. As Gene lays in bed, he's thinking about Janice, and he finally remembers what Fuchs whispered in his ear as they stared at Janice's dead body in the trunk. He whispered, "Barry Berkman did this." Gene utters, "Oh my God." And that's it. That's the end of season 2. And if you think this was, kind of tough to, oh man, I got to go to the next episode on HBO Max, soon to be just called Max because someone's smoking crack over there. After this happened, you didn't get the payoff for almost 3 years.
Which is crazy because COVID, right? So I mean that people forget about that. You kind of waited. It's not exactly the Game of Thrones wait that people waited with the book to the show, but it's 3 years is a long time in this world, and yeah, I mean that's kind of a big deal. Good ending here, man. I thought this last scene was cool for a couple of ways. I like that kind of Gene's effort with Leo. Leo's kind of given him a chance here and was there for him. I thought that was really cool. Kind of taking care of him a little bit. But it was interesting how they did these flashback memories of Gene as he kind of closes his eyes and thinks back, and it starts with all the good stuff, of him and Janice, and then it goes to that the bad stuff, and then you kind of see that. Hard for me to believe that you would be in such disarray and shock that you wouldn't remember that right off the bat. It would take like a down moment of thinking about your thoughts to remember Fuchs telling you that. That's I don't know, man. I mean, I get he was really sad, but she had been gone for months. You had to believe she was dead at that point. I get seeing her body, but how would he not remember that?
Well, the answer is pretty obvious. It's because the plot required that, because otherwise he would have told the cops that this guy, Goulet, told him that Barry Berkman did this. They'd get Barry's phone. They'd start looking to it. Again, did he have a gun in his car? Did they even bother to search it? That kind of thing. And I think it would all just fall apart, very quickly if Gene had remembered, unfortunately. I think that's the real answer. Sure, the shock and everything, but you're not wrong in that if he didn't remember it right away, I don't know that all of a sudden he's going to remember it, conveniently a day later when the plot allows for it. And yeah, we weren't kidding about the wait between. If you go on to HBO Max and you want to watch season 3, episode 1, the previously on is like 43 minutes long.
Yeah.
I'm lying. It's not 43, but it's probably over 5 minutes, which is a long time for a previously on, which is generally 45 to 60 seconds, something like that. It's like, okay, it's been a while for Barry here. So
yeah, we'll bring you back up to speed. and I went through that.
Yeah, even rewatching these, I think I've definitely found, despite the fact that I rewatched before season 3 started last year, I think just we watched season 3, we talked about it so much, it literally just erased some of the previous seasons in my brain. Just cool. It was like, watching it for the first time again to a certain extent.
That about does it for the recap discussion of this episode. And before we go handing out our awards, we'll get to that. First, let's take a look in what other people thought here about this episode. Our friends over at IMDb had this episode titled Berkman Greater Than Block. They had it at a rating of 9.3, which is somewhat rare air. That makes it the 4th highest rated episode out of the 24 available episodes from the first 3 seasons of Barry. Pretty good. Mills, what did you think, man? Is this a top 4 episode of Barry for you? And please, 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 no future spoilers. We're not at that section just yet.
Cards on the table here. Just watching it, that's probably about right. But personally, I have to knock it for just some of the plot holes. There are just so many here. I think the character motivations track, which is more important. If people were doing stuff that was out of character, I would care more about that than these police plot holes. But there's so many of them. They seem so obvious that I have to ding it a bit for that. So I would say this is more of a top 3rd episode. I think 4th overall is just a little bit too rich for my blood. How about yourself?
Yeah, I don't see it being. There's some really good episodes of Barry. To me, it's not. Even just on the surface of watching it and kind of the excitement around it and how they ended it and everything else, it's not. Too many plot holes. There's episodes that are, in my opinion, a lot better. So I'm not rating it that high.
Yeah, I would say if I had to rate it amongst the first 3 season finales, I would put it the worst of the 3. Although, again, there's never been a bad episode of Barry. Maybe you could argue that there's never been a bad episode title of Barry, but I might argue with you on that. Bill Hader has admitted they don't spend a lot of time on the episode titles. I get the concept of Berkman Greater Than Block here. It's the 2 competing personalities. Who is he really? I get what they're going for, but logistically here, this is just a giant pain in the ass to write. To say, Jamie G, any alternate suggestions over Berkman Greater Than Block here?
Well, dude, I mean, the one that jumps out and slaps you in the face has got to be Heroin Table, right? I mean, Heroin Table would just be so good. I would have rather they did Barry Berkman did this. I think that would have been a cool kind of title because it doesn't kind of pay off till towards the end of the episode where you know what Fuchs said. So that would have been kind of cool too.
I think that would have been the best one, but from a realistic standpoint, when they released the episode title, someone would have figured out within 5 minutes that that's what Fuchs whispered. So that might have been just a little bit too much of a spoiler. If this were, if the Sopranos writers were titling this one, it would be called The Best of Fleetwood Mac. I think maybe an apt one would be I'm Really Just Asking. Also fun would be The Word I'm Looking For. And, a lot of fucking seats if you could fucking curse.
That would work too. And Mills, go ahead and cue the tribe because it's time for the awards tour. We'll open with our favorite quote or dialogue exchange from this episode. I'm up first here. Mills, I'm going with the rather deep, kind of prudent quote from Fuchs here, man.
I used to think people like you were the shit, man. Badasses like yourself always fascinated me. But doing it, actually pulling the trigger, ending a life, well, that takes someone with no soul.
And this was positioned at a cool part in this episode because this was before the Barry Rage. This was after Fuchs was gonna kill Gene Cousineau and couldn't. So I just this really jumped out to me. I wanted to use something funny, but that really works for me here.
I like that. I think that's one of the more profound exchanges in the episode. For me, I have to go back to the still reliable here in the exchange between Hank and Fuchs.
You guys are like Fleetwood Mac. You break up, you get back together again, and then you go out and make a great album, like the best of Fleetwood Mac.
This is maybe more final.
That did it for me. I'm sorry. I know it's not the most profound thing, but I just enjoyed it so very, very much like the best of Fleetwood Mac. Up next is our favorite
Great album.
moment. Oh, yeah, it really is. I wonder how long it took him in the studio to make that one. Up next is our favorite moment or scene from Berkman Greater Than Block. My turn to go first here. Let's see here. I've covered the heroin table. you covered Fuchs talking to Cristobal and Esther there. So give me the other acting class students' performances. I really enjoyed those all. We didn't get to see a ton of them. It was just the right amount. I really enjoyed them. They each had their own merits. So that's what I'm going with. A lot of fun for me. Jamie G, favorite scene, moment, what have you?
I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I wasn't going to, but it's my favorite part of this episode, and I have to. So I'm gonna kick it. Make that 2 for the Gipper here. Now, that brings us to our Greek freak of assassins, which is our MVP of the episode. My turn to go first here, and this was kind of a tough one, man. But I'm gonna do a Cristobal Hank kind of combo platter here. I think they started this episode having to hate each other and kill each other, and at the end of it, they gave a hug and a leg wrap and a pelvic hump and said "I love you" in foreign languages. Yeah, I got to give it up for them. I think they ended this in a good spot, even though there's the threat of Batar here. Hank's got his love, man, and that's, so does Cristobal, so that's special for me.
Is it too late to submit a pelvic hump for the alternate title of the episode? And see, I had a whole cool thing here. I was going to do a callback, like we got our Greek freak of assassins, but don't forget that Barry is also referred to, but don't forget that Hank is also referred to Barry as the Michael Jordan of assassins. That means there's 2 of them, which means you could take a dynamic duo like Hank and Cristobal. And God damn it, you stole my thunder. All of the stuff you said, I think they are the absolute clear winners in this episode. You give the runner up to Sally, but I think Hank and Cristobal, number 1, doing leg lifts like the goddamn Dirty Dancing. And we're not Dirty Dancing. We're certainly not Roddy T's. We're not Rotten Tomatoes, but we still have to do our best to give a grade to Berkman greater than Block in honor of Henry Winkler, Gene Cousineau himself.
Because I'm the Fonz, huh? Hey.
We grade each episode of Barry on a scale of 1 to 10 Fonzies. Hey! My turn to go first here. Like I said, really enjoyed this episode, but I have to ding it for all the plot stuff. If the police plot line didn't have so many holes, I'd probably put this episode in that 9.4, 9.5 range, but I got to knock it for it, so I'm knocking it down to 9.0, 9 Fonzies. Hey! Jamie G?
I'm right in that same universe with you, man. Exact same reasons. I'm calling this one right at 9. You know what? I hate to disagree with you, but I'm going to. I'm giving it 9.0 Fonzies as well. 9 A's.
Well, we are simpatico on this episode, and thank you for being simpatico with us so far, but this is it. This is the beginning of the spoiler section. If you do not want to get spoiled on anything from future episodes of Barry, news about Barry, anything like that, go ahead, check out now. Thanks again for tuning in. Please remember to do the like, comment, rate, follow, subscribe thing. We've already covered season 3, so you can find the next episode of Barry, Forgiving Jeff, the season 3 premiere, on our podcast feed or on our YouTube channel. For everybody else, here is our spoiler discussion for Berkman greater than Block. And I think I'm almost done having to say that name.
Thank God. I don't want to say it again. Dude, I'm just going to jump right out here now that we're in spoiler section. So again, if you weren't paying attention to Magnum Mills, this is spoiler section and your last warning before we spoil a bunch of shit. Really interesting to see him in jail here. I didn't realize that we actually saw Barry in jail previously. And obviously we know kind of how season 3 ends and how it looks to be the start of season 4 with him, being locked up in the pen, dude. I thought that was kind of cool, man. So I forgot that he was in jail, to be honest with you.
I mean, he's held. I don't think he's ever officially booked or whatever, or put in the system, but he definitely is held as a material witness. Part of the reason we start the beginning of season 3 with like 4 Chechens is because Barry kills them all here, and we see that Akmal and Yandar survive because they're the ones who escape Fuchs, and he gets sent out to Goatland when he's out in Chechnya for the first couple of episodes there. And I think this episode really cements the idea that Lindsay is personally invested in Sally's career. This has gone a little bit beyond the typical agent-client relationship, and you'll see that continue basically through all of season 3, where, yes, Lindsay has professional investment in Sally, but I think she is definitely personally invested in it. This is really kind of the genesis of that, I think.
Yeah, Totally agree.
And you also see that Sally kind of has a casual relationship between lying and being an artist that continues in season 3. She has artistic, principles and integrity when it's convenient. When it's not, she does whatever it takes to succeed. And you could say that's just Hollywood. I don't know. Maybe we see a little bit of a change in Cristobal from here to season 3, because when they show up here, Cristobal almost seems a little bit excited. He's talking to his guys about going to war and everything, like it's cool. But by the time we get to season 3, it's kind of just like, oh, remember Barry killed my buddies. And he's sad. And basically does this do it? Is this kind of massacre here what pushes Cristobal, I wouldn't say onto pacifism, but just he's kind of lost his stomach for this uber violence?
It could be that, and I think love, man. I think finding true love I think that kind of makes it so it's like, why are we doing that? All you need is love, man.
It's a real. I'm trying to remember the characters from Dirty Dancing. Johnny and Baby. Are those are those really the names of the
Is
two
it Baby?
leads?
I think it might. I think you
Jennifer
might be
Grey's
right.
Baby, and it's Patrick Swayze. I think he's Johnny for some reason. I feel
Yeah.
like he's Johnny 5. One little surprise here is any thoughts on Hank and Cristobal not keeping the monastery? I know that the cops find it, and obviously it's a crime scene. Early in the season, when Barry infiltrates the monastery, they shoot him in the street. There's a car crash. Cops do nothing. How come the cops are so involved here when almost all of the action takes place inside the monastery?
Right.
The cops aren't there right away. It's just another thing that doesn't really make a ton of sense if you track it, because maybe they needed somebody from the Burmese mafia to hang on to it. I can't believe they couldn't find one person they could turn or something, because it seemed to be very useful, right?
Yeah.
You get into season 3, and all of a sudden it's like there's no more stash house, there's no more monastery, and it's just kind of Hank and Cristobal hanging out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just them, they lost their stomach for it. Now they only wanted to, watch reruns of Kardashians or whatever. Or
there's always been a lot of kind of inconsistency around the police in this show. That's kind of if you had one kind of thing that you could beat it up on a little bit, that's definitely one of them. Sometimes they're like right there and super engaged, and other times it's like, all right, we got live shootouts with semi-automatic rifles on a major throughway interstate in California with innocent people, cars being shot up, and nothing. No cops. Everything just gets yada 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 under the rug. But then we have something else where they're there in 5 seconds. They're finding Janice's car in 2 minutes. So
it's been consistently inconsistent. I'll say that. I had a theory, and it's almost that they boiled the frog, so to speak. They knew at the end of season 2 what they wanted to happen, but they knew the only way it would work would be for the cops to be just basically incompetent. So about early in season 2, they just started slowly making the cops more and more and more incompetent. So when it gets to the end, you finally don't even really think about it, what exactly is going on here. That's my theory. And that's why the cops turned into basically comic relief, because that's the only way that the story would work. Because if they had any kind of competency, the story would have ended a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, it wouldn't be able to continue. So, I mean, that's why I kind of just wrap it up to being, it's just, you just kind of got to enjoy the show.
I like it. So you just admitted Magnum is greater than Jamie G.
Well, maybe so, maybe not. But we do know that that's a wrap on Berkman greater than Block. Mills, as Raoul Duke once said, what's the score here? What's next?
I made you say the greater than thing for the last time, so mission accomplished for me there, and mission accomplished for us. This officially completes our coverage of the first 3 seasons of Barry. We've already got a season 4 preview episode. It's available on our podcast feed, on our YouTube channel. We will be doing weekly episodes for season 4 of Barry. Those will drop on Tuesdays. We've got a double header to start off the season. I can't wait, except for that's going to be a hell of a night of television.
Whew. Neither can I, man. I mean, seriously, that means on Sunday the 16th, we've got Succession, all right, which we all know where that show's at 9. And then we have 2 episodes back-to-back of Barry at 10. That's going to be a hell of a night, man. So get your popcorn ready. Get ready for more Barry podcasts. And thank you again for checking us out here on the Barry podcast. We hope you enjoyed our show. And we really hope that we added something to your overall Barry experience. Whether you're rewatching the thing like us or you're checking out Barry for the first time, we are glad to be here with you. Please remember, like, subscribe, comment. Just stop making us ask for it. Just start doing it, dude. Just make that part of your daily fiber. We'll greatly appreciate it. Mills, anything else, my dude?
Well, he went from LL Cool J and doing it well to going into fiber. And then I just remember like that old Wilford Brimley commercial for Insure or whatever. So thanks for that mental image. And thank you for checking out the Barry Podcast. Again, find us wherever you get your pods. Search for Barry Podcast. Search for us on the YouTube. You find our YouTube channel at JoeBlowFootballShow.com. Find us on social media at Barry Podcast. Our coverage of the first 2 episodes of season 4 will drop on Tuesday, April 18th. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. We are the co-presidents of the Mitch Fan Club, and we like to go out by bringing it in. 1, 2, 3, Cusino!